Story 1. In Almost Famous, when they're leaving that random party and they're all getting on the tour bus, Tiny Dancer starts playing in the background and slowly they all start joining in and singing. The main character says, "I need to go home," and Kate Hudson hits him with, "You were home." I don't know why, but that's my favorite movie and that's my favorite scene in it. Haha. Story 2. One standout scene is from The Godfather, where Al Pacino's character is forced to stand outside the hospital, pretending to be the muscle protecting his father. By the end of it, he realizes his hands did not even shake. A brilliantly acted, subtle, and intense moment. Story 3. My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix legions, and loyal servant to the true emperor, Marcus Aurelius. Father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next. Story 4. Probably Boromir's last stand and his final scene with Aragorn. It's just so powerfully moving. I love it. Fellowship is the best Lord of the Rings movie, don't argue with me. Story 5. Inigo Montoya, offer me money. Count Ruggin, yes. Inigo Montoya, power 2, promise me that. Count Ruggin, all that I have and more. Please, Inigo Montoya, offer me anything I ask for. Count Ruggin, anything you want. Inigo Montoya, I want my father back. You son of a bitch. Story 6. The opening scene after the story crawl in Star Wars 1977, with the Rebel blockade runner and Star Destroyer. At 5 years old at the time, it blew my mind and started a fandom I enjoyed so much. Story 7. Charge of the Rohirrim. Just such an amazing scene that gives me chills every time. I especially love when the music cuts out as they hit the orc line and it's just diegetic sound. Story 8. A few off the top of my head. Opening scene in Inglourious Bastard. Scene in the parlor after they discover Felix's body in Saltburn. Coin flip in No Country for Old Men. Story 9. Karen seeing how connected a 21-year-old Henry Hill was, and being nearly front row for Henny Youngman at the Copacabana, must have been intense. Goodfellas is based on a true story, for those who do not know. Story 10. Quint relaying his experience with the sinking of the United States ship Indianapolis, and his subsequent hatred and fear of sharks in Jaws. The sickened smile when he says, "I'll never put on a life jacket again," still gives me a shiver. Story 11. Lord of the Rings. The Return of the King. When Aragorn gets crowned and he tells Frodo and his friends that they bow to no one. It's the weight of that sentence concluding all 3 films and hours upon hours of watching the films. Story 12. Yulaw's End in the One. Sent to Hades, he declares the realm his domain and proceeds to defeat every criminal sent there, as the shot zooms out while Last Resort plays. Story 13. 4 years, it was the ride of the Rohirrim from Return of the King. But now it's the scene in Dune 2 when Paul arrives south. Seeing this in IMAX was nothing short of life-changing. Story 14. In Bullet Train, Lemon and Tangerine are counting their kills. Honestly, anything with those two is terrific. The twins are the best part of an amazing movie. Story 15. I don't know about all-time favorite, but my first thought was the phone call between Damon and DiCaprio in The Departed. You called this number on a dead guy's phone. Story 16. Forrest Gump talking to Jenny's grave makes me cry every time. Every single time. I could pull it up on my phone at the office right now and be crying within 2 minutes. Story 17. Wonder Woman 1984. The scene where Steve and Diana had to let go of each other again for the last time, and Steve shouted, "I will always love you, Diana, no matter where I am." Story 18. Tombstone when Ike says to Wyatt, "Law dog, if you don't step aside, we'll tear you apart. You die first. Get it? Your friends might get me in a rush, but not before I turn your head into a canoe. You understand me?" Story 19. The full shadow on the sun scene in Collateral. Max and Vincent have a short discussion about life being short and whether or not Max will call Jada Pinkett Smith's character. The Coyotes. Scavengers. Alone. Out of place in regular society. Max's recognition of who he is. What he is. The various shots of Los Angeles, the city is almost its own character in this scene. Shadow on the Sun by Audioslave plays. It's this poetic, somber, almost beautiful moment in the middle of a traumatic, violent, chaotic night. Or maybe the explosive diarrhea scene in Dumb and Dumber. Story 20. In Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, when the crew is preparing the Enterprise for the final battle against the Reliant, officers and crew are heading to their battle stations. Damage control parties are being positioned, and photon torpedoes are being loaded. Story 21. Kill Bill Volume 1 when she meets Orin. That entire scene, from the music to the delivery, is absolute perfection. You could cut that tension with a butter knife. Story 22. The acting, writing, tension, music, and set design. It's all just a perfect masterpiece. Story 23. I have two scenes that still give me chills during a rewatch. The What's Up Danger scene from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. The battlefield run scene by Will Schofield from the movie 1917. Story 24. The ending escape scene in Children of Men. I had heard great things about that scene, but it completely blew all expectations out of the water. I was completely drawn in and holding my breath throughout so much of it. Story 25. It's a toss-up between the ending of Heat, released in 1995, and the ending of Collateral, released in 2004. Both movies feature the two leads in a final shootout, with only one surviving. The difference is that in one, there's mutual respect, and one is able to comfort the other as they die. In the other, the attempt to comfort the dying is dismissed and rejected. Both offer a bittersweet, satisfying ending. Story 26. The scene from The Terminator at the Club Tech Noir. When Sarah knocks her drink off the table, the Terminator scans in her direction, but she's reaching down at that moment while it all plays in slow motion. The Terminator gets to the back of the room and realizes the only person it didn't identify was the one ducking down, and it makes its way back. Story 27. I love the climax of the movie Star Trek, the motion picture, where V'Ger and Decker and Ilya all meld into one new being and transcend the universe. Story 28. This is obscure, but in the 2007 animated movie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, there is a moment where Leonardo and Raphael are facing off. Leonardo has been away for several years and returned home, and immediately picks up the mantle of leadership. Raphael balks at this and they argue about it. After much sparring, Raphael asks why Leonardo thinks he should be in charge, no questions asked. He gives a few reasons and then simply says, "Because I'm better than you." I have never seen a better scene in any movie that showed the dynamic between a firstborn and secondborn son. The tension, the voice acting, the dialogue. Every big brother thinks he should be in charge, simply because he's the eldest. There's no reason or justification needed. I'm the elder sibling, so I'm better than you. Fall in line. Story 29. Echo versus Jinx in Arcane. This fight is a build-up from their childhood together into young adults where they are enemies, as well as their development into the legends that they are portrayed as in all forms of media and games. Excellent music, editing, choreography, and not a single word is spoken. Story 30. Beneath this mask there is more than flesh. Beneath this mask there is an idea, Mr. Creedy. And ideas are bulletproof. Story 31. Midsummer, the end. Watching Christian's face of absolute shock as he's placed in the temple, watching the ritual of the people, experiencing the absorption of Danny's character into the family, the entire community emoting together in a final crescendo, and that beautiful, brilliant smile at the end. It's a perfect ending. On that same note, the end scene to The Wicker Man when Lord Summerisle, played by the masterful Sir Christopher Lee, says to Sergeant Howie, "It is time to keep your appointment with the Wicker Man. I think I have a movie type." Story 32. Probably, my friends, you bow to no one. There's 1,000 great scenes in cinema, but that scene just completes the trilogy I hold as the pinnacle of filmmaking. Story 33. The scene in Inglourious Bastard, before everything goes wrong in that bar, was one of the best scenes for me. The build-up was intense, and when the shooting starts, it was unbelievable. Story 34. The docking scene in Interstellar. The fact that nothing violent or incredibly action-packed happened, and it was probably one of the most intense scenes I have ever seen. Plus, the cinematography was incredible. Story 35. In Ever After, a Cinderella story, Danielle punches Marguerite after a comment about Danielle's mother being dead. Danielle Drew Barrymore. Marguerite Megan Dodds. Story 36. Walk the Line. Johnny Cash wakes up after passing out walking in the rain drunk to the sound of construction. Two men are fixing up a house, to which his only reply is screaming, "Hey, that's a beautiful house." Immediately followed by the scene of him moving in. Gold every time. Story 37. Howard Saint. Howard Saint. You killed my son. Scream and explosion. Both of them. I made you kill your wife. Made you kill your best friend. And I'm going to kill you. The Punisher, 2004. Story 38. Life's the same. I'm moving in stereo. Life's the same except for my shoes. Life's the same, you're shaking like tremolo. Life's the same, it's all inside you. Story 39. Three Steps Above Heaven, where they are sitting in the car and it is raining and then he comes out and they are both crying. There is a similar scene in The Notebook where they are yelling at each other and then breaking up. Story 40. This is not my favorite movie, and I know it's so darn stupid, but in Pitch Perfect 2, when Bumper and Fat Amy sing, "We belong," across the lake and make their way to each other. Oh my gosh, I laugh so hard every single time. Story 41. In Excalibur. Any man who would be a knight and follow a king, follow me. And then they all rode off to the song of O Fortuna to save Patrick Stewart's castle. In the next scene, Arthur. Swear faith to me, and you shall have mercy. I need battle lords such as you, Uriens. Scornfully a noble knight swear faith to a squire? Medor. Never, never. Arthur. You're right, I'm not yet a knight. Arthur. Hands Excalibur to Uriens and kneels. Arthur. You, Uriens, will knight me. Then as knight to knight, I can offer you mercy. Merlin. Alarmed. What's this? What's this? Medor. Keep it, Uriens. Uriens. Hesitates and then touches Excalibur to Arthur's shoulder. In the name of God, Saint Michael and Saint George, I give you the right to bear arms and the power to meet justice. Arthur. That duty I will solemnly obey, as knight and king. Merlin. I never saw this. Uriens, rise, King Arthur. Uriens. Uriens kneels before Arthur. I am your humble knight, and I swear allegiance to the courage in your veins. So strong it is, its source must be Uther Pendragon. I doubt you know more. Story 42. Not so much one scene, but in Sex, Lies, and Videotape, from the moment Cynthia enters Graham's apartment until she talks to and in John about the video, is the best of everything, especially Cynthia. Acting, casting, writing, editing, you name it. They say that men aren't good at writing female parts. Perhaps this is the exception to the rule. Story 43. Recently in Dune 2, when Muad'Dib enters the palace of the Harkonnens and kills his grandfather. Always the scene when the warden finds out that Andy escaped from Shawshank. Story 44. The Copacabana scene in Goodfellas, where they walk through the line of people waiting to get in. Henry takes Karen in through the kitchen, and the staff carry out a table and chairs just for them. All one continuous take. Story 45. One scene I've never forgotten was from the old movie Death Race 2000, where teams of drivers got points for killing people during the race. Hit the baby. Hit the baby. The baby turned out to be a bomb. Story 46. The well scene in Lawrence of Arabia establishes the dynamic between Lawrence and Sharif Ali in an amazing way. It is incredibly tense and sets up the relationship that will best define the film. There is also irony in that, despite his protests, Lawrence becomes a much more violent murderer than Ali. Additionally, there are two greats constantly stealing the scene from one another and trying to outshine one another. Story 47. Not a movie, but in The Sopranos when Paulie is making wisecracks about how Chris's daughter will be a stripper and the whole crew is laughing. That panning shot with Tony's demonic and smoky smile is haunting. For a movie, I'll go with Blade Runner, the chase in that building culminating with Roy's famous speech. Story 48. A recent scene I liked a lot was in Prey when Nair was standing perfectly still so the predator would not notice her as he walked right by her, then silently raised the gun and shot him in the head. Story 49. I have to say it was in the movie Jules when he turns in the direction of the woman who is getting attacked and he looks very dark. That was one of the most beautiful things I've seen in my life. And it was because he was remotely exploding the head of the attacker. Fantastic. If this planet was invaded by a bunch of Jules, I wouldn't complain. Story 50. Cain and Angelus against impossible odds. Drakengard. No words, just a blood-soaked battlefield and two souls bound by fate, heading toward their inevitable doom. Story 51. Dueling anthems in Casablanca. Because it's the greatest movie Hollywood ever made distilled into its essence for about 180 seconds. The movie, to this point, has been dancing around the political conflict at its core, mostly using it for plot purposes. That changes when the visiting German delegation is loudly singing Watch on the Rhine in Rick's Café Américain in unoccupied France, Morocco, and Paul Hainrade's idealistic freedom fighter Victor Laszlo decides to fight back in kind by leading the café in La Marseillaise. The camera work is 30 years ahead of its time. Almost every cut is set off by one character looking at another. We understand finally why Ingrid Bergman's Ilsa loves Victor, and also who Rick really is underneath the cynical exterior. It's worth noting that most of the bit characters we see in the cafe throughout the movie, dripping with subtle and specific bits of character, were played by refugees who had fled Europe, so this was probably the most cathartic day ever on a movie set. And reject Nazis and reject Nazism. Story 52. Bardock's vision of Goku, Dragon Ball Z. Bardock, the father of Goku. Seeing his son, his people's last hope, and smiling through his own death, gives chills every time. Story 53. Gojo vs. Sukuna, Jujutsu Kaisen. When two unstoppable forces clash, it is not just about power. It is about pride, philosophy, and the sheer joy of battle. Story 54. The Tyrannosaurus Rex's final roar, Jurassic Park. No words, just the king of dinosaurs standing victorious as the When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth banner falls. Absolute cinema. Story 55. Cinema Paradiso, when Toto watches the movie reel that Alfredo left for him. I've probably seen it over 100 times. It makes me cry every single time. It's just perfect. And the music is amazing.